4 minutes until showtime. Three minutes until showtime. Two minutes until showtime. One minute until showtime. Your show will go live in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1.
And welcome back to Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. This is your host, Dan Zimmerman, coming at you from New Orleans, Louisiana. To join the conversation, it's 914-803-4131. That's 914-803-4131. You can also join us in the chat at youtube.com/liberaldanradio. If you are listening on Blog Talk Radio live during the show, I just recommend you come on over to the YouTube channel as well, as because monitoring two chats is more difficult and more people watch over there. So come on over and watch over there, and it'll be much better that way. If you're listening after the live broadcast, you can always leave your comments, questions, concerns, etc. over on the show thread at liberaldan.com. You can also leave your comments on youtube.com/liberaldanradio as well, or respond, comment to me at liberaldanradio on Twitter, facebook.com/liberaldan as well, etc. Lots of different ways to comment. If you want to support the show, the best way to do it, subscribe to the channel, watch videos, like videos, engage with the videos, comment on them, share them with your friends, spread the word about Liberal Dan. Also, make sure that your friends subscribe to the channel as well, because that's the best way that we can get up to the 1,000 viewers that we will need to get monetized. We also, if you want to support on a monthly basis, you become a Liberal Dan Radio patron, and you could also, on a one-time only basis, you could also Venmo me at Liberal Dan on Venmo. Just do friends and family, because you're not buying anything from me. Or you could do the buy me a cider option. Click the buy me a cider button on liberaldan.com, or go to coffee.com/liberaldanradio as well. Shouts out to the Mod Squad, Aaron and Jolie in the chat, as well as Jeff just popped up. What's up going on, Jeff? How's it going today? Don't have my bits this week. I had a couple of headlines that was interesting. That whatchamacallit, apparently, so I'm not going to do an official this week's headlines because I only have one that I really went after. There's a couple of ones. Apparently, Danny Masterson from That 70 Show was convicted of rape, 2 counts of rape, and there was the hung jury on the third. So, yeah, that's good that he was convicted, because there was some very troubling things that were told about him. So it's always good to see that in a culture that it's very difficult to obtain rape convictions, that we can actually get convictions of them, and he could face up to, I think, 30 years in prison for it. So the more rapists in jail, the better it is. Apparently, Senator Lindsey Graham was shown to be celebrating the death of Russian troops, which caused an arrest warrant to be issued for Graham by the Russian government. And Lindsey Graham's response was, I'll submit myself to the jurisdiction of the International Criminal Court if Putin does as well. Which to me is oddly tough talk for the person who plainly and willingly bent over for Donald Trump repeatedly. Jeff, yes, there was potentially a joke to be made there. But I decided to not make it, because I figured it would have been in poor taste. And to me, for me to avoid the poor taste joke is as Aaron could probably can attest to, is a good thing. I would say it's a show of my filter, so to speak, because normally I am all about the poor taste jokes, but that was a little bit even too far for me. So I'm not criticizing you for it. I'm just saying I wasn't going to be the one making it. I happened to be noticing, I don't know if you happen to pay attention to the minutia of the show, but I did do an update of the video capture software that kind of does the green screen effect, because I don't have a green screen in and of itself, but the software that I use called XSplit puts a virtual green screen behind me, so that I can have this right back here or whatever. I'm kind of noticing, I mean, while it's still not perfect, I'm noticing it's a lot crisper today. I mean, it's still, I mean, when I have my hand up here, it's getting a little bit better, but I'm noticing it's a lot crisper today. It's a lot less problematic than it usually is. So, yeah. So it's a good thing, I guess. I guess it's good to update your software every once in a while. Although it's not a good thing to update your software right before you're about to stream, like I did a few months ago when I updated OBS, and OBS was like, we don't like your drivers. Haha, we're not gonna let you stream today unless you roll back your software. And that was panic mode 2.0. Hey P-Dubs, thank you for joining us as well. Appreciate it. Always like streaming. Minor housekeeping or cleaning or whatever the word you want to use. Next week there will not be a Wednesday show. I have a Duran Duran tickets, so I'll be going to that concert on Wednesday. But on Thursday night after the Twitch stream, I will be live at 11 p.m. Central. So at night, and we will be bringing on Philip Bittner again. So Philip Bittner will be live on the show at 11 p.m. Central Thursday my time. It'll be Friday his time. I confirmed that last night, this morning for him, I guess, whatever. But yeah, Phil is going to be back on the show. We're talking about some Ukrainian issues, lots of stuff to talk about. So wanted to make sure that we did have a show next week, and I figured it was the perfect week to have a Phil show, specifically considering that I wasn't going to be able to do a Wednesday show because of the concert. So there's that. On personal news, I actually had a picture taken of me today. I took an extended lunch break and spent it with some family today, and somebody took a picture of us when we were out, and I was sitting with my wife, and I could actually tell that I lost weight. And I felt that I lost weight, and like sitting in my car, like I could just tell like the distance between my stomach and the steering wheel has grown, meaning that my stomach has shrunk. But visibly from pictures, I hadn't really noticed. But in that picture today, I was like, oh look, I actually look like I lost weight. So that's a good thing. So yay. Well, we will get to the scum Alito in a second. The activist conservative Supreme Court has struck again. I don't know if we're going to go into a word-for-word reading on the bill like we did for the Dobbs v. Jackson ruling, or like we will do when they get around to some of the other rulings that are impending, like I'm sure I'll do for whenever they come around to ruling about the student loans, and whenever they come around to ruling about what's the thing? The mifepristone and the abortion pill or whatever, and its availability and the FDA approval. When they get back around to that, I'm sure we'll be doing a live whenever that comes out. But I did see that they had a ruling on it, and I was going to briefly discuss it today until I saw that it was an Alito ruling. I'm like, well, if it's an Alito ruling, I definitely got to cover it, because Alito rulings suck. And we like picking on Alito on this show because Alito is the worst. I'm not going to go out and say that, well, I don't know. I think Justice Alito may very well be the worst Supreme Court justice that there ever was. I mean, he's terrible. He's horrible. I mean, Scalia, I may disagree with a lot of Scalia's arguments and rulings in and of themselves when it comes to what he believed, but I could at least understand the argument that Scalia would make, and I could at least see why Scalia was making the arguments that he was making. And when Scalia would say things like, when Lawrence v. Texas was passed, when he said that, he said, because Lawrence v. Texas was passed, we will then see gay marriage be legal in the future. When he said that, I'm like, well, good. And I agreed with him on that. You know, he said that begrudgingly. He said that because he didn't like it, but he knew that that was coming because of what happened. But and every once in a while, Scalia was right, in my opinion, because he firmly held on to certain constitutional principles and didn't waver on them simply because, you know, conservatives didn't like the result of them. So every once in a while, Scalia would say something, but like, you know what? That's correct. That is an accurate statement. But Alito is just horrible. And I don't understand how he comes up with the rulings that he comes up with. And even in the first couple of sentences in this ruling that I had a chance to peruse before the show started, I was just like, wow, this is going to be good. So we may review a little bit of it. I may have to move some things around if I'm gonna do the review live with the text. Maybe I should do it that way. I don't know. We'll see. I don't know. We'll see. But we're going to go over some of the other stuff first that we want to cover. Like, for example, Ron DeSantis and his desire to dewokify the United States of America. That's what he feels is his responsibility. If he becomes president, he is going to dewokify. Is there some way? I guess it's if you he wants to let's see, DeSantis insanicize. There's got to be some sort of play on words there that I'll have to come up with if he manages to become the nominee, which he could manage to become the nominee if what happens on the next topic, actually winds up burning Trump. But because because Donald Trump is so stupid that he can't stop saying stupid stuff. He literally, as I said in the show about the civil trial, he just can't. He's too stupid to know to stop talking. He doesn't even remember, I think, things that he says, and he just says things that just completely contradict himself and makes himself into a hypocrite. Spoiler alert, guess who's Hypocrite of the Week this week? Even when people ask him, what is woke? When people ask DeSantis, what is woke? Or he asked his attorney what woke is, and his attorney gave a perfectly succinct and precise and accurate statement. I don't know if that was his attorney, but the attorney that was representing him in the capacity of state government. It was asked in court, well, how do you define woke? And it was like the idea that that there are systemic injustices in the system, and that we need to address them and fix them so that they no longer exist. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's it. So if that's what DeSantis wants to get rid of, he wants to get rid of he doesn't want to get rid of the injustices. He wants to get rid of the attempt to get rid of the injustices. So DeSantis enjoys the injustices that exist in the system. To him, they're not a bug; they're a feature, to use software development parlance. But yeah, when he says, we're going to dewokify America, or however you want to say it, like make America dewokified again or something. Hey, Wes, what's going on? Arrogance and stupidity is a bad combination, yes. Especially because when you're arrogant and stupid, you don't realize that you're stupid. You think that you're intelligent. You think that you're smart, and you're really not. That's the problem. They think that they're much smarter than they actually are.
90 seconds.
What? That's silly. I know I pushed it for longer than that. So we're going to extend the length of the show again, because we don't want a show that's only 15 minutes. Why do I do that every time? It's silly. I don't know. You think I've been running the show for like 3 weeks or something. Anyway, speaking of the fact that you-know-who can't... did I delete the wrong... Maybe I didn't. I don't know. But here we go. Here's this week's Hypocrite of the Week.
This week's Hypocrite of the Week is former President Donald Trump, who said that he had previously declassified every document that he had taken with a single thought. Now audio has been recovered that seems to show that he knew that he had classified documents, that they were not declassified, and that since he was no longer president, that he couldn't do anything to declassify them. So not just a hypocrite, but as Michelle Tanner would say, you're in big trouble, mister. To see who next week's Hypocrite of the Week will be, tune in to Liberal Dan Radio, talk from the left, that's right. Wednesdays 8 p.m. Central on Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube and blogtalkradio.com/LiberalDan.
Yeah, and this time, as I was saying last week, usually I hit the Liberal Dan with a bum bum bum. Not this week, and I didn't care, because I did it about 3 minutes before the show started. So, but yeah, Donnie Boy is in big trouble.
It is what it is.
Thank you, Donald. He is in huge trouble because he previously said that he believed that the information that was there was all declassified, and it was done with a thought. He could just think it done, and that was his power as president, that he could just magically think them all done, think them all declassified, and that's what they would be. So according to but maybe that's true. Maybe that would be true. Maybe some conservative activist Supreme Court justices might be able to get behind his legal theory and say, well, maybe he did do that, and maybe there's nothing to prove that he didn't do that, so we're just going to take him at his word. But now that if he's on record, because I haven't heard the audio, and I heard MSNBC's reported, but I saw this that CNN had reported it. I have not seen or heard anything on CNN about it, so I haven't necessarily seen or heard the actual playing of the audio in and of itself. So we'll have to believe that it exists until, we're just going to assume that it's true, that the claim is true, etc. But yeah, if he's on record saying, I have classified information, and I know I have classified information, and I'm no longer president, then that completely nullifies his legal theory that he automatically declassified everything with a single thought. So that can't be a defense that he uses anymore, because he's completely, to use his own name, he trumped himself. So how then did he not violate the law? The law that he himself signed into law that made the punishment from a misdemeanor into a felony, each count of such felony being was it a minimum of 5 years in prison, I believe? It was punishable 5 years. I don't know if it was a minimum of 5 years in prison or a maximum of 5 years in prison, but 5 years for each count, and I believe each document would be eligible for a count. So however many documents he had times his account, he could be in prison for a long time. So maybe Ron DeSantis could see an opening there and say, hey, Donald Trump goes to prison. Maybe I very well see my chance of becoming president opening wide up in 2024. Or at least if he's in the middle of a court case, then guess what? I can, it'll be much easier for me to be able to campaign, because Trump is going to be too busy dealing with his legal woes. Maybe they'll be having him in jail because they'll be too worried that he'll flee. I don't know. But here's the thing. Even if Donald Trump is convicted, he could run from prison. I don't see why he wouldn't be able to run from prison. There's nothing prohibiting a felon from being a president. So he could potentially run from prison. And then I guess they would have to let him out, let him sit in the Oval Office and serve out his presidency until what? Maybe he pardons himself at that point? I don't know. I don't know how that will work. We would then be in uncharted territories, uncharted waters, if you will. Keep that term in your head, uncharted waters, because we'll be heading back to the term waters in a little bit, or maybe not so long from now. But let's see, Ms. Pete up. As far as I know, no news agency has heard that audio. They're saying is it Jack Smith? I think it's Jack Smith. Yeah, no, I was about to say Jack Ryan, but that's Tom Clancy novels. So let's see. What the southern border seems to be a crisis that we love. Abortion raises campaign funds, and what morality among the rich? Yeah, there's no morality among the rich. What are you talking about? I am getting tired of him going to get it and then never getting it. Tim, what are you talking about? Like, going to get what? I'm not sure what you're saying there. But hopefully in this case, hopefully in this case, if we have that audio, hopefully that is the straw that breaks the camel's back that requires then charges to be brought. That there's no excuses at this point. That charges will then have to be brought, because there's then at that point no excuse. Because there's no way then because then if you have an audio of him admitting to the crime, then how could you not bring charges? It's as simple as that. And if charges are not brought, then what do? Then of course you have the obnoxious question that was asked. I think DeSantis basically posited that if he were to be president, that he would pardon Donald Trump for whatever crimes that Donald Trump has done, for all of the crimes that he did. I should say whatever. I should have said for all of them, because I'm sure there's plenty. And then Biden was asked, would you consider pardoning Donald Trump? And Biden did the correct thing. President Biden smiled and walked away and ignored the question as any reasonable person should. Hey, Trucker John, what's going on? Thank you for joining. Tim, can't pardon himself, watch for a deal with Trump, leaves the race in a deal in exchange for DeSantis. Support for DeSantis and a pardon for Trump. Can he not pardon himself? I don't know if that's a... I don't know if that's a legal theory that has been tested. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything that restricts the presidential authority. I would like to... Is there something like... Is there a certain part of the code? Or is there a certain part of the Constitution that denies him the ability to pardon himself? I'm not sure. I don't know. I think there was a debate about whether or not he could do it back then. Now, of course, if he wanted to be pardoned, like Nixon got pardoned, he could have just resigned early and then had Pence do it. But he missed that. He missed that boat. But anyway, of course, when Joe Biden refused to answer the question as to whether or not he would pardon Donald Trump, as Joe Biden should have refused to answer the question because it's a ridiculous question and you should just pay no credence to ridiculous questions, you had people like, Cenk Uygur from the Young Turks, or the Young Jerks as I called them the other week, being like, oh, Joe Biden said won't rule out pardoning Trump because Joe Biden is just your typical, he is who I say he is, and blah, blah, blah. Which is why I created my whole video, my fat man rant about how Cenk Uygur and Anna Kasparian and the whole Young Turks have all jumped the shark, and how we need new progressives. And if you haven't watched that video yet, please go do so after the show's over, and please make sure to share it with your friends because it's getting some views. It's like over 100 at this point. Definitely want to have more views than that, but it's basically the point of that video is that these people are just grifters from the left. They're not there to make any sort of serious contribution. They're not there for any sort of progress, even though they might claim to be progressives. They're not there for any real progress. They're there just to make money and to make wild and crazy statements. Somebody even pointed out on Twitter earlier today about how one tweet in 1 year, Cenk was all saying, I'm fully behind the whole defund the police movement. And then, a couple years later, he is like, I'm against terms like defund the police because of how people can misconstrue the term or whatever, which is why that's one of my upcoming coming in terms of activism videos is going to be about defunding the police and why people misuse the term and how people define terms, attack terms based on their own perceived notions of what the terms are instead of attacking terms based on what they're actually supposed to be and what the people using those terms mean them to be, and that's disingenuous on the part of the people attacking the terms. The young turds, yes. Heard Anna is getting a lot of praise. Well, Anna's getting a lot of praise from the right because Anna is probably still, I haven't seen it recently, but she's probably still repeating a lot of the TERF rhetoric that she was repeating previously. Hey, Alarasia, what's going on? That's another video that I had that was both a fat man rant and a coming to terms with activism, which was the fact that she was spouting and repeating transphobic rhetoric, that she was, not wanting to be called a birthing person. Well, I don't, again, to repeat that point, I don't typically refer to people as birthing people or use those terms when it comes to describing individuals who were harmed by the Dobbs ruling. I instead refer to people who were harmed by the Dobbs ruling as people who were harmed by the Dobbs ruling, because I don't necessarily think that people should be defined by their functions. And as such, because that seems to be a little bit limited. Whereas I think it's better to say that if they're harmed by the Dobbs ruling, it means those are the people that are being denied body autonomy by the extremist, activist, conservative justices on the court that overturned Roe v. Wade and Casey versus Planned Parenthood. But the whatchamahoosit, I understand why the people who do use those, because sometimes it's inartful to try and make sure that everybody is inclusive, and I don't think everybody has settled on ways to be completely inclusive when referring to folks who are, you know, gender non-conforming, non-binary, agendered. If you're a indigenous person, if you happen to be two-spirit, stuff like that. And I go into that in that video as well, because there are many different ways that people can be outside of the standard antiquated gender binary, and instead of having to label every single one of the possibilities that you're probably guaranteed to miss a couple, why not just refer to people in a more inclusive way, especially as it pertains to, you know, the way they were harmed by the Dobbs ruling, i.e. people who were harmed by the Dobbs ruling. Like, and the whole way that people are angry that, oh, I'm not a cis woman, I'm a woman. There's no need to put a modifier in front of me. I've always been a woman, so why are you calling me a cis woman? Well, because in the particulars of this conversation, when it comes to whether or not, you know, you are somebody who's being targeted by these extremist politicians who want to deny your abilities to participate in sports or deny your abilities to get gender affirming care, etc., you are not one of the people being harmed, and as such, you are not a trans person, you're not a trans woman, you are a cis woman. And trans in science is the opposite of cis, and there you go. It's not an attack, it's not a slur, it's just a scientific label that is used where appropriate. And I'm not going to refer to people as cis women and trans women when it's not appropriate. I'm going to refer to them as women when it's appropriate. So there you go. Let's see, Elleria. Glad to be back. Been traveling Vegas to see my granddaughter. Poconos for vacation. Awesome. I didn't realize you had a granddaughter, Elleria. Cool. Well, welcome back. I hope you won some money in Vegas, and had some time. Although I guess what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so I guess you don't have to tell us. Trucker John is a breeder. I guess that, are you saying that you're a breeder as in you're heterosexual, or as if the way that some people who are gay might refer to the straights, or are you saying you're a dog breeder or something, like you breed animals or whatever? Jeff Curry, I'm still trying to settle on the best. Oh, jeez, I bet you will not share. Maybe email me after the show. I don't know. Debt ceiling vote passed, 314 to 117. Not surprised. It was very interesting because I was watching MSNBC right before I came upstairs, and the host, I think it was one of the hosts, asked one of the Democratic Congress people, why did you vote for the Republican bill? And the person's like, well, but because it's important we don't go into default. And I'm like, well, duh. And of course, the whole thing with, you know, of course, and then Cenk Younger's like, Joe Biden gave away the entire thing. They call it a compromise, but it wasn't a compromise. Well, you know, the Republicans wanted to go after certain things, and Biden said, no, you can't go after these things. Meanwhile, they didn't just do it for this year. They basically said the debt ceiling is suspended through 2025, so we don't have to deal with a debt ceiling argument until after the election, which I think is probably the most important part of this whole darn thing, is it's not a topic that's going to be up for debate until after the election is over, which is probably the best thing that Biden could have hoped for. So, anywho. She's brand new, 4 months old. Well, mazel tov on your grandchild. Yeah, I don't really even watch Jimmy Dore. Like that's one of the things when Hal starts talking about Jimmy Dore, I have no clue, because I've never watched, and because I have so many other conservative folks and so many other hypocritical folks that I think Dore used to be liberal and now he's a wackadoodle. Like so many others that I've watched that I've seen just go wackadoodle, that I just really have no desire to add another one to the tally. Of course, because I'm mentioning his name a couple of times, I'm sure now my phone will be like, hey, let's show Dan a whole bunch of stuff of his content now, because now, you know, he clearly wants to know about it now, even though he's saying, I don't want to. So I'm talking to my phone now. I don't want to. Don't show me his crap. It's going to show me his crap now. And that's the other thing, is that if the you know, again, I call myself liberal Dan because that's what Rebecca Pratt labeled me. conservative talk show host. I wear the badge as a badge of honor. You know, I wear it with pride. You know, I don't get offended like many other leftist progressive types who, you know, you call them a liberal, they're like, oh, I'm not a liberal, blah, 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 blah. You know, I don't get mad about it, you know, but one of the problems, you know, they want to hang everything on Biden with the debt ceiling deal or whatever. And they want to say it's all Biden's fault that we didn't get everything. That's not all Biden's fault. It's the voters' fault. Voters don't come out every election. If you're a voter and you're a leftist, if you're a progressive, if you're somewhere left of center, and if you didn't come out in every single election for the last 20 years or more, now 25 years, I should say, because Project Red Map started in 2010. So if you haven't come out for the last 25 years, if you've been a voter for the last 25 years, I should say, or less if you're younger, then it's your fault. You're partially to blame because you're responsible for electing people as a voter. And if you didn't give Biden a Congress that would pass a clean debt ceiling bill, that's your fault. If you stayed home and did nothing while New York was able to elect 5 new congressmen, congresswomen, whatever, Congress critters to the House and give Senate or give Speaker of the House McCarthy his position, guess what? It's your fault. You're the one who did it. Biden didn't do it. Biden wasn't responsible for the fact that the House of Representatives flipped to the Republican Party. Biden was probably responsible for the fact that it didn't flip as badly as it could have. In fact, it didn't flip as badly as it could have, probably become more so because of the fact that the Republicans are to blame for that, because the Republicans keep pushing the pro-life, anti-abortion garbage that has made a lot of people be like, well, wait a second, this isn't cool. We don't like this, so we're gonna reject Republicans in a lot of the areas. But you still needed to come out in more areas to turn out and make sure that the Republicans didn't take the House. And if the Republicans didn't take the House, and if we still had a Democratic Speaker of the House, and we still had a Democratic majority in both the House and the Senate, we wouldn't have to strike deals with McCarthy and other conservative crackpots, other conservative crackheads or whatever, and we wouldn't have to worry about all this crap, and we could have passed a clean debt ceiling increase and not had to worry about all of that. And we could have continued lowering the deficit while, you know, raising revenue like you're supposed to, because yes, you can cut spending. I have no problem with cutting spending, but cut spending in appropriate ways, like, you know, the military industrial complex. Stop paying off your insane donors who, you know, want tanks and jets that the military doesn't even want. Stop those projects and make sure that, you know, instead put money towards the veterans, make sure the veterans have health care, make sure Social Security is funded, make sure we have Medicare and Medicaid funded, make sure that we have all of the social nets covered, make sure that we have infrastructure paid for jobs so that we can actually put people to work and stimulate the economy. All that good stuff that Democrats like to do, the Republicans, you know, are allergic to, apparently. So, see, Hal just wants to call Doron and his BS, and rightfully so. Yeah, I mean, I have no problem with Hal calling Doron his BS. I just don't listen to Dor enough or at all to really know anything about his BS to begin with. So, what's up, Pisces Greeter TK? How's it going? Oh, Teresa just changed my name. Just wanted to change in my body, not disposed. Okay, what's going on then? Nice. Hey, what's going on, Bill? Good to see you. Hey, Cynthia, good to see you as well. All right, let's go ahead. Let me. I need to change my windows around a second if I'm going to do this way. So let's. How am I gonna do this? Do it that way. There we go. And then I need to put this down here. over here. And then we need to expand this and make this bigger. And the alternate's not going to look right because I think it's going to have a different, am I right? It's either going to be infinite or it's going to be, you're going to be seeing the chat. Oh no, that's right. It's just not, that's not correct either. So let's delete that. Yes. And then we're going to add video capture device because I upgraded this and you're going to see a big version of me for a second. Yes. And then we're going to make me smaller again. There we go. Okay. There we go. Forgot to make all those changes because of the upgrade. All right, so here we go. Sackett versus the Environmental Protection Agency. It's a little background on this first before we do it. So I guess the background on here is actually on here. So petitioners Michael and Chantel Sackett purchased property near Priest Lake, Ohio, Idaho, and began backfilling the lot with dirt to prepare for building a home. The EPA informed the Sacketts that their property contained wetlands and that their backfilling violated the Clean Water Act, which prohibits discharging pollutants into the waters of the United States, USC 1362-7. So let's bring that. I think I had that over here as well. Okay, 1362-7. Let's just make sure I have that looking all right as well. 1362. All right, 7. The term navigable waters means waters in the United States. Let's scroll down. That's just definitions. Anyway, so District Court entered a summary judgment for the EPA. Ninth Circuit affirmed, holding that the CWA covers wetlands with an ecologically significant nexus to traditional navigable waters and that Sackett's wetlands satisfy the standard. Held, the CWA's use of waters in 1362-7 refers only to geographical features that are described in ordinarily parlance as streams, oceans, rivers, and lakes, and to adjacent wetlands that are indistinguishable from those bodies of water due to a continuous surface connection via another ruling, Rapinos. To assert jurisdiction over an adjacent wetland under the Clean Water Act, a party must establish first that the adjacent body of water constitutes waters of the United States, i.e. a relatively permanent body of water connected to a traditional interstate navigable water, and second, that the wetland has a continuous surface connection with that water, making it difficult to determine where the water ends and the wetland begins. So, here we go again with Alito making up things as he goes along. The uncertain meaning of the waters of the United States has been a persistent problem, sparking debates of the agency action litigation. Resolving the CWA's applicability to wetlands requires a review of the history surrounding interpretation of that phrase. Waters. We are debating whether or not or what waters means. We're debating the meaning of the word waters. Are we serious? During the period relevant to this case, the two federal agencies in charge of enforcement of the CWA, the EPA and the Army Corps of Engineers, similarly defined the waters of the United States to broadly encompass all waters that could affect interstate or foreign commerce, Agencies likewise gave an expansive interpretation of wetlands adjacent to those waters, defining adjacent to mean bordering, contiguous, or neighboring. Well, that's what adjacent means. Bordering, contiguous, or neighboring. Like if I have a house and you live next to me, you're my neighbor, you're adjacent to me. I don't have to be able to draw a pathway from a continuous pathway from my house to your house. You're adjacent to me if you're adjacent to me. It's pretty clear. Pretty clear. English, MFer, do you speak it? As Sam Jackson would probably say to Alito. The court rejected the rule after the Corps sought to apply it to several isolated ponds located wholly within the state of Illinois, holding that the CWA does not extend to ponds that are not adjacent to open water. Solid Waste Agency of Northern Cook versus Army Corps of Engineers. The agencies responded by instructing their field agents to determine the scope of the CWA's jurisdiction on a case-by-case basis. Within a few years, the agencies had interpreted their jurisdiction over the waters of the United States to cover 270 to 300 million acres of wetlands and virtually any parcel of land containing a channel or conduit through which rainwater or drainage may occasionally or intermittently flow. Against that backdrop, the court in Rapidos vacated a lower court's decision, blah, 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 blah. Under the agency's current rule, traditional navigable waters, interstate waters, and territorial seas, as well as their tributaries and adjacent wetlands, are waters of the United States. So too are any interstate lakes and pond streams or wetlands that either have a continuous surface connection to categorically included waters or have a significant nexus to interstate or traditional navigable waters. Finding a significant nexus continues to require consideration of a list of open-ended factors, blah, blah, blah. Finally, the rule returns to agency's longstanding definition of adjacent, i.e. English, MFer, do you speak it? 2. Landowners who even negligently discharge pollutants into navigable waters without a permit potentially face severe criminal and civil penalties under the Act. Well, I mean, if you negligently put dangerous things into waters, maybe that's a bad thing and maybe you should be punished for it. You know. You're going to have me singing, Wes. You don't want me, I don't know if you want me singing Money for Nothing. We got custom kitchen deliveries. We got to move those refrigerators. We got to move these color TVs. What's great is that Weird Al's version of the Beverly Hillbillies, which is a parody of Money for Nothing, he actually got the guitarist from Dire Straits, I forget his name, to perform the guitar. Like, I think that was the caveat. Because even though it's parody and he doesn't have to do it, he always would ask permission to do it, to make the parodies of the songs, and the guy from Dire Straits was like, sure, as long as I could play the guitar on the song. And Weird Al's like, okay, you can play your guitar, you could play the guitar on my parody that I'm going to make for you. That's awesome. So, let's see. What whole movie? Let's see. My favorite is from Strange Brew when the brakes go out and Van and Bob crosses arms and says, well, no point in steering now. The really funny part is that you have the inappropriate part in the Money for Nothing, and the Weird Al part is like, that little Clampett is a millionaire. How we managed to fit that in there. That was amazing. Hey, Rose, thank you for sharing that the bill just passed. Appreciate it. And it's just the House, right? So now it has to move on to the Senate, I'm sure. And is there any prognosis about how the Senate is going to go with it? If there's any feelings about how the Senate feels about it, or will the Senate just rubber stamp it simply because of the fact that, or is it going to, because it's, because it's financial in nature, it shouldn't be subject to a filibuster. So it should not require 60 to pass. So it should be a simple majority. So any Republican obstruction should be minimal and should be able to get passed pretty quickly. So as such, I don't see any problems, especially because they did give a little bit of a token of appreciation to Manchin for some West Virginia to Virginia pipeline thing as a little olive branch to Manchin to basically say, look, we're going to give this to you if you frickin' sign it, so just sign it or just vote for it. I'm sure Tim Kaine probably is not happy, but I mean, we do have an extra vote, I suppose. So, Neil McCoy does a country rap version of the Beverly Hillbillies theme. Nice. See, back to the ruling. Some wetlands nevertheless qualify as waters of the United States, specifically 1344 G1, which authorized states to conduct certain permitting programs. Suggests that at least some wetlands must qualify as waters, but 1344 G1 cannot define what wetlands the CWA regulates because it is not the operative provision, blah, blah, blah. So let's think the most important thing here is more likely so it's reversed and remanded. EPA's various policy arguments about the ecological consequences of a narrow definition or adjacent are rejected. Alito delivered the opinion of the court, in which Roberts, CJ, and Thomas Gorsuch Barrett joined. Thomas filed a concurring opinion in which Gorsuch joined. Kagan filed an opinion concurring in judgment, which Sotomayor Jackson joined. Kavanaugh filed a concurring in judgments. So some of this is... There was 9-0 in... It was 9-0 in that they agreed, all 9 of them agreed that it was wetlands. So there was that. But not all 9 of them agreed that the EPA lacked the authority. So there was that. So let's see. We're on a big old blank white page, so hold on. Now this is the opinion of the court now. This is actually the opinion. Let's see. Case concerns the nagging question over the outer reaches of the Clean Water Act. Of course, it's so nagging, blah, blah, blah. Formerly fetid bodies of water are safe for use and enjoyment of the people of the country. There is an unfortunate footnote to the success. The outer boundaries of geographical reach. The act applies to the waters, but what does that phrase mean? What does waters mean? That depends on what the meaning of the word is. You know, they make fun of Bill Clinton for saying asking what the meaning of the word is. But are we not going to make fun of Alito for asking what the meaning of the word waters is? Like, come on. For most of this nation's history, the regulation of water pollution was left most entirely to the states and their subdivisions. However, as it pertains to interstate commerce and as it deals with things with water going from one to the other, and as commerce grows and as commerce gets bigger and as commerce can affect one state to another and as pollution gets bigger, you could see how common sense would dictate that there would be more federal oversight, because the larger business grows and the more pollution is created by these industrial practices, because you didn't have industry like this back in the 1700s, in the early 1800s like we have now. So the bigger, large industries that we have are more likely to cause interstate problems, not just intrastate problems, but interstate problems, where you're going to have pollution from one state going to another state, and as such you need a federal agency, because only a federal agency can deal with those issues, and as such you need that federal agency. That's why you have the EPA. Stupid Alito. Ugh. Yes, the Mississippi is a drainage ditch. Exactly. Yes, you're dead on. As Mona Lisa Vito would say, and my cousin Vinny, you are dead on balls accurate. The Mississippi River is a drainage ditch. And us in New Orleans, we get the everything, all the crap that comes from upstream just comes all the way down the river to us. Don't go swimming in the Mississippi River, especially because the tide will just take you out to sea. Unless there's a storm coming up river, then you actually get the fun. We were actually standing on the levee one time, and we were watching the river go upstream, and it was very weird. It's very surreal. Got a video of it. Yes, thank you, Jolie. Support Liberal Dan Radio. One time, buy me a cider. Go to liberaldan.com, click the buy me a cider button, go to buymeacoffee.com/liberaldanradio. You can scan the Venmo to send me a one-time Venmo at liberaldan at Venmo, or you can become a Liberal Dan Radio patron, patreon.com/liberaldan or patreon.liberaldan.com. Either way will get you there as well. So again, this is another thing that where Alito just doesn't seem to understand the fact that, first of all, this is an appeal to tradition. He's starting off his argument with an appeal to tradition. It doesn't matter that for most of the nation's history that we did a certain thing, because the Constitution clearly allows the federal government to step in and deal with such things. And just because we did a thing for a certain amount of time, it doesn't mean we should continue to do a thing. The common law permitted aggravated parties to bring nuisance suits against polluters. But what good does it do if you bring nuisance suits against polluters if they've already polluted? How does that stop pollution? That just punishes polluters. You need to be able to prevent pollution from the get-go. Let's see, but as industrial production and population growth increased, the quantity of states gradually shifted to enforcement by regulatory agencies. It's fine. Conversely, federal regulation was largely limited to ensuring traditional navigable waters, that is, interstate waters that were either navigable in fact or readily susceptible of being used that way, remained free of impediments. Congress's early efforts at directly regulating water pollution were tepid, although the Federal Water Pollution Control Act of 48 allowed federal officials to seek judicial abatement of pollution in interstate waters. Impose high hurdles, requiring consent of the state where the pollution originated, blah, blah, blah. But just because they did that, it doesn't mean that they had to. It doesn't mean that they had to. They could have just said, because of the interstate commerce clause and because of, all the other parts of the Constitution that grants us the authority to deal with this sort of crap, we get to do it. Because it doesn't matter that the fact that the state where the pollution is coming from surely shouldn't matter that the state pollution is coming from a state. It should matter that the pollution is going to another state. Because why would if the state where the pollution is coming from doesn't care that if the pollution's going to another state? I mean, they're not the aggrieved party. The aggrieved party would be this. If I'm in the Mississippi River, I'm state of Mississippi, and if I allow a plant to open right at the base of like the southernmost part of my state, right where the Mississippi River hits Louisiana, and I allow a plant to open right there, why would I as a Mississippian care if that pollutes? It's not going to affect me. It affects Louisiana. So why would I then ask Mississippi if I would be okay with me coming down with my authority as the federal government to clamp down on pollution coming from that plant? I wouldn't care, because that's why I allowed them to build there, probably. Because I said, look, you can build here, but you have to build right here, because then you're not going to bother us, because it's just us, because it's not going to harm us. It's just going to harm them, and we don't care about them. We just care about us. So build it right there. That's why the federal government has to step in. That's why the federal government needs the authority to do that sort of thing. That's why the Constitution grants the authority to do such things. And so, like, what? So, like we have a bunch of wetlands in Louisiana. So, at what point do, like, the Louisiana wetlands, like, do you have to, like, does you have a line of wetlands? All right, so then, like, let's say the wetlands like trace a line this way. Like, do all of, as long as I could draw the line for, like, if the wetlands like are like this, and then it comes like up like this, and then goes like this. So if this touches a navigable water, and then this doesn't touch a navigable water, and this doesn't touch a navigable water, but if all of these are contiguous, is this still protected because this like, come on. Like, Alito is bending over backwards to try and protect, probably the people that are, feeding and housing Thomas's mother. According to the EPA, the wetlands on the Sackett lot are adjacent to, in the sense that they are the same neighborhood as, what is described as an unnamed tributary on the other side of a 30-foot road. Appendix 33, that tributary feeds into a non-navigable creek, which in turn feeds into Priest Lake, an interstate body of water that the EPA designated as traditionally navigable. To establish a significant nexus, the EPA lumped the Sackett lot together with the Kalispell Bay Fen, a large nearby wetland complex that the agency regarded as similarly situated. According to the EPA, these properties taken together significantly affect the ecology of Priest Lake. Therefore, the EPA concluded that Sackett's had illegally dumped soil and gravel onto the waters of the United States. I mean, I'm going to trust the experts of the EPA over Supreme Court Justice Alito as to whether or not the waters of the Sackett's land, the wetlands, if you will, have an effect on Priest Lake over Justice Alito. If the EPA is going to say that these waters have an impact on the lake, then I'm going to believe it. Now maybe in court they should have to prove that. Sure, and I'm sure that they did. But I'm sure Alito was like, I don't care. I don't care that you say that it does, because to me, as long as I can't see it, it doesn't count. Right? Because to him, as long as he can't see the connection, it doesn't count to him. But like, there's things like groundwater, water systems of water connect underground. There are many different ways in which bodies of water connect. It doesn't have to all be visible. Right? But this is the limited thinking. Like, this is why a lot of people, like, you look at some attorneys, always use this for Ben Carson. Ben Carson was a brilliant brain surgeon, did some brilliant things as a brain surgeon in Johns Hopkins, if I'm recalling that correctly. He used all of his brains for his brain surgery skills. Had nothing left for anything else. Absolutely nothing left. When it came to anything else, dumb as a box of rocks. Would I let him operate on my brain if I had a brain issue? Absolutely. Would I let him do my taxes? Absolutely not. Would I let him do anything? Would I let him drive my car? Absolutely not. Because I don't believe he'd know how to turn it on properly. These people put so much, but I don't even know that I would even trust him to be my lawyer, because he makes such bad arguments. One of the things I've said about lawyers is, if you're an attorney, half of them are wrong. Right? You go to trial. Bring a case to trial. One side you typically have one side that wins, one side that loses, right? Which means half wins, half loses. So typically half of attorneys are wrong. Sunday, Ozark sunbed, a bunch of bobbing around the water, a bunch of dock, a bunch of music. A boat came across the lake to ask us who that was playing. Me and the other day, so proud to point at them and say, it's these guys. Nice. In defining the meaning of the waters of the United States, we revisit what had been a contentious and difficult task. It's so difficult to define waters. Let's see. Let's. I think I'm going to skip a bunch of the opinions, because we're not going to go much into the opinion of the court, because, I mean, we already know how dumb Alito is. We just skipped a whole bunch of pages and we're still down to opinion of the court. Waters in the United States principally refers to traditional navigable waters that our CWA decisions operated under the assumption that, unsurprising, ever since Gibbons, blah, 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 blah. EPA argues that waters is naturally read to encompass wetlands because of the presence of water is universally regarded as the most basic feature of wetlands, but that reading proves too much. Consider puddles, which are also defined by the ordinary presence of water, even though a few would describe them as waters. Okay, Alito. He's using puddles. This is why Alito is so terrible. Or one of the reasons. He's using puddles to debunk an argument from environmental experts. He's using a puddle to make an argument against why a wetland shouldn't count as waters of the United States. Like, are you serious? Like, come on. Like, come on. I'm trying to find a good sound for that. Okay, there we go. We'll boo Alito on that one. Dictionaries tell us that the term adjacent may mean either contiguous or near, random house. So is he going to go fishing but construing statutory language is not merely an exercise in ascertaining the outer limits of a word's definitional possibilities. Blah, 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 blah. In addition, it would be odd indeed if Congress had tucked an important expansion to the reach of the CWA into convoluted language and relatively obscure provision concerning state permitting programs. Blah, blah, blah. If 1344G were read to mean that the CWA applies to the wetlands that were not indistinguishably part of otherwise covered waters of the United States, it would effectively amend and substantially broaden to define navigable waters as waters of the United States and adjacent wetlands, but the term does not does not do any such a thing, blah, 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 blah. Okay, we're bending over backwards is to try and again, using puddles to try and determine why we would not want to. Yeah, so we're gonna just scan by a bunch of this because it seems to be like with a lot of Alito's arguments, they tend to be a lot of repetitiveness. Oh wait, nothing in the separate opinions filed by Justice Kavanaugh and Justice Kagan undermines our analysis. Justice Kavanaugh claims that we have rewritten the CWA and that Justice Kagan levels similar charges. These arguments are more than unfounded. I'm sure they're not. I'm surprised that Kavanaugh disagreed. We have analyzed the statutory language in detail, but the separate opinions pay no attention whatsoever to key statutory provisions that limits the CWA's geographic reach to the waters of the United States. And the fact that, I guess, they don't count puddles. We reverse the judgment of the Ninth Circuit, blah, blah, blah. All right, let's see. Justice Thomas, of course, because Justice Thomas has to be a special snowflake, and he needs to write his own thing. I'm sure Justice Thomas probably wrote somewhere in here that not only does he agree with Alito, but that he wants to overturn the entirety of the EPA, and the EPA should go away, and there should be no Clean Water Act and no Clean Air Act as well, and all of them should be on the shelf. All of them should be, under threat as well, because all of them are improperly founded, yada, yada, yada. Because of the fact that, this is Justice Thomas we're talking about, and, this is what he likes to do. Now, I'm not saying that's what he did. I'm just saying that that's what he likes to do because, it's Justice Thomas, and that's what he did in Dobbs. Come on, let's skip over Thomas because we're not going to deal with Thomas's thing right now. Kagan. With whom Justice Sotomayor and Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson join concurring in the judgment. Like Justice Kavanaugh, I would stick to the text. As he explains in the principal concurrence, our normal method of construction identifies which wetlands the Clean Water Act covers, and the answer provided exceeds what the court says today, because the act covers the waters of the United States, and those waters included all wetlands adjacent to other covered waters. The act extends to those adjacent wetlands, and in ordinary language, one thing is adjacent to another, not only when it is touching, but when it is also nearby. Wait, hold on. There you go. There you go, Justice Kagan. That's deserving of an applause. So, for example, one house is adjacent to another even when a stretch of grass and a picket fence separate the two. As applied here, that means, as the EPA and Army Corps have recognized for almost half a century, a wetland comes within the act if it is contiguous to or bordering a covered water, or if it is separated from a covered water only by a man-made dike or barrier. I was like, is that a typo? But no, she actually meant to say man-made dike or barrier, natural river berm, beach, dune, or the like. In excluding all the wetlands in Category 2, the majority's continuous surface connection test, which is basically they made up a test. The majority made up a test that to put on these wetlands, which is basically judicial activism. They legislated from the bench. They took what was supposed to be, plain text verbiage from the law and made up their own little test to on top of what the law says, and they made their own little law, just as apparently Kavanaugh said that they did. Disregards the ordinary meaning of adjacent. The majority thus alters, more precisely narrows the scope of the statute that Congress drafted. And make no mistake, Congress wrote the statute it meant to. Clean Water Act was a landmark piece of environmental legislation designed to address a problem of crisis proportions. How bad was the water pollution in 1972? Just a few years earlier, Ohio's Cuyahoga River had burst into flames fueled by oil and other industrial wastes. And that was merely one of many alarms. Rivers, lakes, and creeks across the country were unfit for swimming. Drinking water was full of hazardous chemicals. Fish were dying in record numbers. Texaco's drilling. Killing. I feel super. Thanks for asking. Sorry. Breaking into song again. Those caught were often too contaminated to eat, with mercury and DDT above safe levels, so Congress embarked on what the court once understood as a total restructuring and complete rewriting of existing water pollution law. The new act established a self-consciously comprehensive and all-encompassing program of water pollution regulation, or said a bit differently, the act created a program broad enough to achieve the codified objective of restoring and maintaining the chemical, physical, and biological integrity of the nation's waters. Not puddles, but waters. If you've lately swum in a lake, happily drunk a glass of water, unless I guess you live in Flint, straight from the tap, or sat down to a good fish dinner, you can appreciate what the law accomplished. Vital to the Clean Water Act's project is to the protection of the wetlands, both those contiguous to covered waters and others nearby. As this court again formally recognized, wetlands serve to filter and purify water draining into adjacent bodies of water, and to slow the flow of surface runoff into lakes, rivers, and streams. Wetlands thus function as integral parts of aquatic environment. And if you live in Louisiana, you understand this because we lose wetlands a lot, and wetlands serve to protect a lot of things. They protect us from the storms coming in. They protect a lot of stuff from coming out. It protects a lot of stuff. And wetlands perform those functions, as Justice Kavanaugh explains, not only when they are touching a covered water, but when they are separated from it by natural or artificial barriers, say a berm, dune, dike, or levee. Those barriers, as he says, do not block all water flow. In fact, they usually evidence of a significant connection between the wetland and the water. Small wonder then the act as written, rather than as read today, covers wetlands with that kind of connection. Congress chose just the word needed, meaning to meet the act's objective. A wetland is protected when it is adjacent to a covered water, not merely when it is adjoining, contiguous, or touching, or in the majority's favorite made-up locution, has a continuous surface connection. Today's majority, though, believes Congress went too far. The majority's view the act imposes unjustifiably crushing consequences for violation of its terms, and many of those violations it thinks are of no real concern, arising from mundane land use conduct such as moving dirt. Congress and the majority scolds the unleashed EPA to regulate swimming pools and puddles. She also mocks puddles, which makes me feel good. Wreaking untold havoc on staggering array of landowners. Surely something has to be done, and who else do with this court? It must rescue property owners from Congress's too ambitious program of pollution control. So the majority shelves the usual rules of interpretation, reading text, determining what the words used there mean, and applying our ordinary understanding, even if it conflicts with judges' policy preferences. the majority's first pass through the statute is, as Justice Kavanaugh says, unorthodox. A minus B, which includes C. Blah, 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 blah. Even assuming that the thumb's existence, the majority still be wrong, as Justice Kavanaugh notes. Clear statement. Wonder why she felt like they need to write something other than. I wonder what Kavanaugh wrote that she disagrees with. That's interesting. Still more fundamentally, why ever you have a thumb on the scale against the Clean Waters protections? The majority first invokes federalism, but as Justice Kavanaugh observes, the federal government has long regulated the waters of the United States, including adjacent wetlands. Majority next raises the specter of criminal penalties for indeterminate conduct, but there's no peculiar indeterminacy saying, as regulators have said for nearly a half century, that a wetland is covered both when it touches a covered water and when it is separated only by a dike, berm, dune, or similar barrier. That is standard and is in fact more definite than a host of criminal laws I can name. Today's pop-up clear statement rule is explicable only as a reflexive response. Blah, 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 blah. I'll conclude, sadly, by repeating what I wrote last year with replacement of only a single word. The court substitutes its own ideas about policymaking for Congress's. The court will allow the Clean Water Act to work as Congress. The court will not allow Clean Water Act to work as Congress instructed. The court, rather than Congress, will decide how much regulation is too much, because that is not how I think our government should work. More because it is not how the Constitution thinks our government should work. I respectfully concur in judgment only. And then Kavanaugh. Let's see. What's up, Gibson Media? I would definitely be interested in hearing your view on or if you know anything about what's going on with this, with what they did with the Clean Water Act and how we have another activist court ruling from Alito et al. And I'm surprised it passed. If Kavanaugh didn't agree with it, you would think that maybe there's no stare decisis here for Roberts to have hung his hat. See, Kavanaugh. Clean Water Act generally prohibits dumping dredged or fill material without a permit into waters of the United States. The waters of the United States include wetlands that are adjacent to waters covered by the Act. For example, wetlands that are adjacent to covered rivers or lakes. Question in this case is whether the wetlands on the Sackers residential property are adjacent to covered waters, therefore covered under the Act. Ninth Circuit has held that they are. I agree with the court's reversal of the Ninth Circuit in particular. I agree with the court's decision not to adopt a significant nexus test. I agree with the court's bottom line judgment that the wetlands on the Sackers property are not covered by the Act and therefore not subject to the permitting requirements. I write separately because I disagree with the court's new test. Okay, so Kavanaugh agrees with the ruling but disagrees with the test. Okay, so that's what's going on here. Kavanaugh does not agree that it is a covered wetland. It is a wetland. Kavanaugh believes it's a wetland. Kavanaugh does not believe that it's a covered wetland, but he also does not agree with the new test that they created. So he does not agree with this whole idea of a continuous surface connection. He believes that that's departing from the statutory text, and as such, that is narrowing the text of the law from something as Congress intended to something less than what Congress intended. So that is what Kavanaugh is writing. So he's weirdly sitting on the fence on this one, where it's weird. That's a weird thing. So he agrees, but he disagrees. Strange. West, Flint. They have water in Flint. Well, they're supposed to have water in Flint, Michigan. It's not drinkable still. That would be if I could point to any failure of the Obama administration and any failure that's continued of the Biden administration, is that it still ain't fixed. But ultimately, the failure that happened with Flint was part of the Republican Party, because Michigan was run by the Republicans at the time. The Republicans made this thing where you could take over a city. They by installing city managers. So basically, you could take a duly elected government and the state government could be like, we don't like these people, so we're gonna yeet them and put in our own city manager. That city manager can then take over and do whatever they like. So the city manager basically said, okay, well, we're going to take this water from this other source, and we're going to funnel it through these pipes, and we're not going to worry about testing what might happen if we use this other water source. And what happened when they started using this new water source is that it, started freeing up a whole bunch of the lead from the pipes, and then Flint had a whole bunch of lead in their systems. So, yeah. But yeah, so Kavanaugh's weird. I don't understand how Kavanaugh can sit here and say that he agrees with the court's ruling, but he agrees with the court's ruling, but he doesn't agree with the test. Like, to me, the only way that the court gets to the fact that the Sackett's land is not covered by the EPA rules is only by applying this new test. If you don't apply the new test, you have to believe that it is protected by the EPA because it's adjacent by any plain text reading of the term adjacent. Let's see. Yeah, Sheila Jackson Lee was talking to NBC, said over 4 million votes were taken away. I need to look more into the whole Texas thing, because there's a show there, but I don't know enough about it yet. I do know about what Texas wants to do from a high level on the ability to be able to just redo an election. I think it's specifically in Harris County, not necessarily anywhere, but maybe it says, because first it's Harris County. I think someone was saying next that they want to go over Dallas next. I don't know if the law says if it specifically targets Harris County or if it just allows them to do it for anywhere in the state, but specifically written with Harris County in mind. But like, I know there was the conversation that there was a certain amount of votes that I guess the now impeached and he's impeached, and now he's going to be under the trial, I guess, or whatever. So now there's going to be a temporary interim Texas Secretary of State while the trial goes on and while they deal with all that crap, because I guess Texas has certain rules pertaining with what happens if you're impeached. And they're gonna be determining whether or not he gets kicked out of office. But apparently, when he was, I think, Secretary of State in 2016, I want to say, or maybe it was 2020, I'm not sure. That there were certain amount of votes. I don't know if they were absentee ballot votes or if they were dropped off votes or what have you. I don't know what the classification of those votes were, but it might have been in 2020. I'm not sure, but that they didn't allow certain votes to be counted because he thought that they were suspect or questionable. And yeah, that there was a statement that it was like 4 million something votes. Now, do I believe that the Republican Party would prevent 4 million votes from being counted? Yes, I believe that they would do that. Do I believe that might have happened in this particular case? Maybe. Do I believe it's also just as likely that this individual said, like, that the Secretary of State said for his own political benefit, hey, I stopped these ballots from being counted as to protect himself, as as a political statement of him saying, hey, I stopped these votes from being cast or counted because I didn't want us to become an Arizona or this other state or what have you. He could have made it all up. I don't know. I really don't know. Let's see. Harris County, millions votes not counted. In 2022, Texas Supreme Court said that provisional votes cast after 7 p.m. won't be counted, but that was 2022. Tim, hey Dan, Tony Michaels is away next Monday and Tuesday. Gabe is taking over, but looking for like-minded guests in their podcast. Would you consider that? I would. Sure, absolutely. At what time? I guess what time is that? Definitely Monday. Not depending on the time. On Tuesday will depend on when I'd be doing on a Tuesday. But we'll depend on the time on both. Because if it's during the day and I have to work, then it would have to be a no. But yeah, I'll email me liberaldanradio@gmail.com and I'll or you can copy Tony as well, and we can do that. We can talk it out. We can work it out, as the Beatles would say. Try and see it my way. Only time can tell if I am right or if I am wrong. Let's see. Texas Attorney General stopped. Millions votes not counted. Let's see. Here's what he says. Texas AG says Trump would have lost state if it hadn't blocked mail-in ballots applications being sent out. Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, a Republican, said former President Donald Trump would have lost in Texas in the 2020 election if his office had not successfully blocked counties from mailing out applications for mail-in ballots to all registered voters. What? So stupid. Harris County, home to the city of Houston, wanted to mail out applications for mail-in ballots to its approximately 2.4 million registered voters due to COVID-19 pandemic. However, the conservative Texas Supreme Court blocked the county from doing so after it faced litigation from Paxton's office. If we lost Harris County, Trump won by 620,000 votes in Texas. Harris County mail-in ballots that they wanted to send out were 2.5 million. Those were all illegal, and we were able to stop every one of them, Paxton told former Trump advisor Steve Bannon during the War Room podcast on Friday. Okay. First of all, just because you mail out a ballot request, doesn't mean that they're going to mail it back in. Second of all, if you mail it out and you mail it back in, it doesn't mean that they're not going to vote in person. How many votes were cast in Harris County? Let's see. 20. That helps if I actually type it properly. 2020 election. Total votes cast, Harris County. Harris County had 2.48 million votes. 65.86% voted. So let's pull up the handy dandy calculator. And we're going to do 2480522 times 0.6586. So 1,633,000. So then 2.48 minus 1.63. So let's see. 248 million, or 2,480,000 minus 163,000 no, equals 850,000. So of the amount of voters that voted in Harris County in 2020. So you already had 65% turnout that voted in 2020, regardless of the fact that they weren't able to send out these automatically mail out absentee ballots, right? Okay, which left 850,000 mail-in ballots to be mailed out. Harris County voter registration figures. Let's see. Harris County, Texas, voter registration by party. Let's see. See if the Harris County registration gives us information about that. I don't see anything about on that page. But basically we're gonna try and debunk this information right here right quick. But I don't know. I don't see off the top of my head. It just says the amount of people that are registered, according to Harris County, just early voted, voted percentage, voted, registered voters. Let's see. Yeah, in 2020 you had 2.48 million registered voters. Yeah, 65.86 voted. A bunch early voted. So yeah, I don't really think that what's his face is I don't think Ken Paxton is really telling the truth there, that somehow he saved Texas from flipping to Joe Biden simply because he stopped them from mailing out these absentee ballots. Because if he did, if he would have mailed them out, who's to say that they would have actually taken advantage of them? If they took advantage of them, who's to say that they would have counted? You know, they still would have had to return them. They still would have had to have been properly filled out. They still would have had to have been like, and if they had the wrong address, then they wouldn't have been. There's so many things in there that have so many logical fallacies that they're in such a panic over this whole thing, and they're all lying about these mail-in ballots, about mail-in ballots. And about just vote and about machines. And we've talked about this before on the show, all because they want paper ballots. They want to be able to flip everything to hand-counted paper ballots. And by doing that, they want to be able to toss those hand ballots away. And that's all they want. See, Jeff, Bill, how many Republicans won that really lost? I'm sure there were some. How many Republicans won that shouldn't have won? Like, for example, we've had horrible gerrymandering that took place in red states, but there were Republicans that won in New York, but because the New York Supreme Court decided that they needed to be fair towards Republicans, and that the Democratic gerrymandering that took place in New York was somehow unfair. So in New York, their Supreme Court was like, well, this gerrymandering is unfair. We're being unfair to Republicans, so we're going to have to redraw this map to be more fair to Republicans. But are the Republican Supreme Courts in those red states saying, oh, well, this gerrymandering is unfair to Democrats? No, of course they're not. So the blue Supreme Courts and the blue state Supreme Courts are being fair to the Republicans, but the red Supreme Courts are not being fair to the Democrats. So therefore you have unfair overall advantages for the Republicans nationwide. So that's why part of the reason you saw the Republicans take over the House is because you had the Republicans get a more beneficial map to them in the blue state of New York, whereas in the red states they got their gerrymandered districts. Like in Florida, when the Republicans in Florida were like, oh, well, we drew this map up, it seems to be a reasonable map, and they were going to pass it, and Desantis is like, nope, I'm going to veto that map, putting my map in instead. We're going to get rid of some more blue districts. And they were like, okay. And they did what he wanted, and they created 4 more Republican seats as well. And those stayed up because clearly they're not, the Republican-controlled Supreme Court in Florida was not going to overturn Desantis, were they? Nope, they were not. What's going on, TV2 Live? Thank you for joining us. Appreciate you. Kevin McCarthy thanks President Biden for handing his own ass to him. Nice. See, Monday, it's 12 noon Eastern. I mean, I guess technically I could do it during my lunch break. Just email me and we'll work it out. I could do it. I could probably do a lunch break. Maybe. We'll see. We'll talk it out. We'll talk it out over email. We'll get it all figured out. We'll see. You know, I could probably do an hour for lunch and do it that way. And I don't mind missing lunch because I've been missing lunch a lot of days because my appetite is really bizarre recently, simply because of the fact that, you know, some of the medicine that I'm on has really made it like I won't be hungry, then I'll be starving, and then I'll eat, and then I won't be hungry again for like another 18 hours or so. It's bizarre. So no stroking, Wes, in any form, in any shape of the imagination. Take care of yourself, Wes. So yeah. Anywho, so yeah. So we've gone over the Alito silliness of the ruling. As again, I was very glad to see that Justice Kagan also picked on his puddles thing, because it just goes to show that I'm not alone in thinking how bizarre Mr. Justice Alito is with his whole puddles analogy. Hey Diana, thank you for joining. Has Hal popped on? Let me just see, because I know Hal is supposed to be going on whatchamacallit yet. Yeah, thank you, Diana. If you haven't subscribed yet, yes, please make sure to subscribe, because I definitely need more subscribers. Trying to get up to 1,001. Hold on, I hit the wrong button on my mouse. I know Hal is supposed to be going live at some point tonight. He's not quite. I don't think he's live yet. He's at Flappers, but I don't see anything live on his channel yet. So one of the things I was going to do tonight is I was going to stop the show once I saw that Hal's Flapper show was live from Flappers. So that was going to be my hard cutoff, but I might even stop sooner depending on what we say. So I'm just going to keep my I'll keep Hal's window open just to see what's going on with it. Dan and I rocked out at 3 Nerd Halen shows now. That's really awesome. I would really love to hit a Nerd Halen show. I hope Nerd Halen comes down here. I told Hal that I want to do I'd love to sing at least one song with him. I'd love to be able to like go on the show. Like my dream, I guess, would be like this is what I would love to be able to do. I'd love to be able to go to the show, like it'd be standing or sitting in the front row or whatever. You know, get there early, sit in the front row, stand in the front row if it's general admission or whatever, or just get a front row seat or whatever. Have go to the restroom or something before like the encore or whatever. Say, hey, if I need to go to the bathroom real quick, if Hal starts with the encore, you know, just record whatever you missed, whatever, then go backstage and then like, you know, come out and like be able to do a surprise song with Liberal Dan or Nerdy Dan, or I'll come on as Nerdy Dan instead of Liberal Dan, since that's my other channel is nerdydan.com, and then come on and do a song with Hal. maybe Monkey Wrench or something, because on my Nerdy Dan channel, youtube.com/nerdydan.com, I do have karaoke where I do Monkey Wrench. So, but that's a pipe dream. That's a probably will never happen, ever. But you know, it'd be nice to have happen. But yeah, so just to do another, since I announced this earlier on in the show, but just to do some of my, I guess, cleanup or whatever, not cleanup, but just housekeeping. Next Wednesday, I have a concert. I am going to see Duran Duran. So I will not be live on Wednesday, but next Thursday night at 11 p.m., I will be having Philip Bittner on, live from Ukraine. So he will be on Thursday night on here, on Liberal Dan Radio on YouTube at 11 p.m. Central, which is like, I think, 7 a.m. Ukrainian time over there. And then, of course, tomorrow is Thursday, and I'll be doing my Twitch stream on nerdydan.com. Twitch, Tuesdays and Thursdays is my normal Twitch streaming time. As I announced before, if I do manage to get to 1,000 subscribers on here, I will add a second show for the week, and I will do Mondays and Wednesdays on live on YouTube and on Blog Talk Radio, and not just Wednesdays. I will do Mondays and Wednesdays to make sure that I have enough viewing hours to be able to get myself monetized, and not just because I don't think I'll have it with the 1 day a week, but 2 days a week might get me there. But I need to have it. I need to get up to. I need to hit that 1,000 mark before I start doing it, because if without it, it's like, to put in more shows. I'm gonna keep on making some video content to try and get some more videos out there. But again, the best thing besides subscribing to the channel that y'all can do is, again, just sharing all the videos. And one thing I might do tonight after I finish with this show is to oh Jesus, Wes. Nice. One of the things that I need to do is there's two whatchamacallits that I want to make. Maybe another Fat Man rant, 2 coming to terms with activism I want to make, and then of course there's the in the back of my head longer video that I want to make pertaining on what I'm currently calling, what is it that I'm calling it? It's compound discrimination is the idea that I'm coming up with. I was expecting that to be deleted, Aaron, thank you. Compound discrimination, which is basically the effect, how compound interest is good for people who are trying to build wealth, and compound discrimination is bad for people, and how discrimination generationally compounds upon itself to keep people not just in debt, but just compounds upon itself to put themselves to have people just put themselves and their families into larger and larger holes that are harder to climb out of, because you have just this systemic problems that just continuously just keep people stifled and keep people from being able to advance in life. So anywho, Loving Jet 2, he loved he rocked David Lee Roth. Looking forward to seeing his Axl Rose. I think I missed something. Is Jet just another band? Like, is that like is that a cover band of Wings? I'm assuming. Or is that Hal performing the song Jet? I'm a little lost. And Jeff Curry's Your Son's Band, Hang Your Hate new song, brand new Nightmare on YouTube. Let me just pull that up. and I'll listen to it after it's done, after the show's done. Hang your hate, brand new nightmare. Copy link address. So it's that. Oh, Jet is the guy that's friends with Hal. Okay, cool. Jet is a Sparkler brother. Very cool. Yeah, I'm not the best singer in the world. Wes has picked on me for some of my singing, but I do have several parodies that I've done on the channel. Some of them are kind of, I didn't give it my all because everyone was sleeping at the time. I didn't want to wake people up, so I did like a parody of Only the Good Die Young during COVID, which was "Stay in or You'll Die Young." Like, stay in Virginia, girl, it can wait. Donald Trump respotted much too late. And stuff like that. So I did a Deo song, but it was "Stay Home." Stay home, stay home. COVID come and we gotta go home. Stay, me say 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 stay home. COVID come and we wanna go home. And then just gone on from there or whatever. And then I had another Billy Joel song I did was "Always a Racist to Me." That was one I'd worked on for a while as well. And then I have, of course, there's the one that Demonox, the first Liberal Dan patron, loves, which is the one of my first show parodies, which is the Hamilton parody, which is "We'll Fight Back," to "You'll Be Back," which I did. I got actually some of my friends and one of the neighbors' kids to help me out on, with some background singing at the end. We did that one, and then we did What Comes Next. I did a What Comes Next parody as well with that one. But shouts out to all of the Liberal Dan Radio patrons. We got Robert, we got Wes, we got Jolie, Julie, Aaron, we got Alan, your boy Chris, we got Cesar, we got Demonox, everyone supporting the show. Appreciate y'all as well. Jeff, he wrote "And Sing It." That's awesome. That's very cool. And actually at karaoke for my birthday, I did a dirty parody. I think I was talking about it on the Nerdy Dan stream the other day, where it was a parody of "When I'm 64," but it was a dirty parody, so just add 5 to the number, and that's the song. Since a judge ordered Stormy Daniels to pay Trump for sex, does that make him a paid sex worker? I don't know if I want to think about that. But yeah, I'm going to put the message out here again too, just in case anybody wants to answer it. Email me at liberaldanradio@gmail.com. Or if you happen to be a patron, you can message me on Patreon, on the Patreon or whatever. But you can email me at liberaldanradio@gmail.com. Or if you go to, let's see, is it Minicast at liberaldan.com? Is that the link to it now? Because now it's actually, Anchor has changed to Spotify for podcasters or whatever. So if you go to here, that's what I call the Minicast. And if you log into there, if you log into there, you can send me a voice message via the Minicast as well. And haven't done one of these shows for a while, but I want to do one. And Later, Jeff. And one of the things I want to do is the first show that I want to make one of these is I need a couple more of these messages first before I do this episode. Is when you were a kid, what did you think would mean success as an adult? I'm not talking about like becoming rich and famous, like becoming a billionaire or a basketball player, or having a Corvette, or becoming having a mansion. Like, that's not what I'm talking about. Like, I'm talking about what would you think about, like, as a kid, like if you would be successful, like the minimal that you would need to be successful, like you would be a successful adult, a successful, maybe not about successful parent, but you would what you would have to have either own or be able to do to be able to be like, okay, this is what I want to be able to do. Either things that maybe your parents did that you think is cool that you'd want to be able to do, or maybe it was things that your parents weren't able to do that you were like, well, when I get older, I want to be able to do this, and if I have these things, then I will have felt that I did well for myself, that I did fine, that I did good. And from the eyes of a child, like, not necessarily, and I want it to be a little bit more than that. But don't tell me in the chat here. I want you to either go to that link that I sent for the podcasters on Spotify.com and send me a voice message with it, and just let me know, like, maybe there are 2 or 3 things. Like, let me know what you think would have made you a success, or whatever. What you think would have equated success as an adult. And I have 3 and or 4 things that I'm thinking of in my mind, and I don't necessarily want to give those away to give you kind of a hint as to well, maybe I'll share one of them just to kind of like lead you on the way. One of the things that I thought of when I was a kid, that I guess, minimally speaking, I guess the smallest thing of them all is a refrigerator that had like an ice machine and a water dispenser up front. Like, it doesn't necessarily have to be that small of a thing, but like that was one thing that I didn't have as a kid that I wanted to have as a grown up. Like, I wanted to be able to have that in my house. Like, I looked like, when I grow up, I want to have this in my house. I want to be able to have a refrigerator that has this that has the ice dispenser and the water. And so I want to be able to have that. And there are other things as well that I'm not going to include now, that I'll do it, that I'll include in that podcast. But I only have like an answer or 2. Like, one person emailed me, like Demonox sent me a message on the Patreon thing, and I think I have one other message somewhere. You could message me like a direct message on Twitter, I think. You could probably send me a direct message on Facebook, facebook.com/DoubleDan, what have you. And either way, if you feel up for it, oh God, Jeff, I'm not going to say the joke I came up with for a hung and jury, and I came up with an AKA. Lovely. Oy. Anyway, and maybe I'll do another one of the mini casts at some point soon anyway, but just to be able to, get that ball rolling as well. But I've been more focusing on making videos for this. But I would like to make a mini cast at some point soon, and I would like to eventually do that show, because I do think it would just be a generally interesting show, and the mini cast is more of a just kind of a general, like, smaller short form type things, and less, and this is more long form. So anyway, so that's just one of several things, and you can listen to some of the other shows that I did for I do have some podcasts with that as well, with that on the Minicast that you can listen to above and beyond the shows that you can listen to on Blog Talk Radio before I started doing the streams on YouTube. Plus there's the streams on YouTube, but I would prefer, start with the streams on YouTube and go backwards, because that way you give me more views. That way you give me that maybe you may get more engagement with more likes and comments on those things, which might make other people watch, which might trigger the algorithms more, which might get more people seeing it, especially when you share it with other people and whatever, blah 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 blah. So again, that's the best thing you can do for the show. So hey Benny, how's it going? I'm glad you showed up, although I'm just about ready to wrap things up. I have to get used to the fact that I have actually got myself a mouse now, so I don't have to use the touchpad on my laptop anymore. But one of these days I'm going to get to 1,000 subs, and then I'll be able to and get 4,000 hourly views in the past year, and then hopefully I'll be able to do get the subscriptions and the super chats and all that other fun stuff too, which would be really nice. But thank you for everybody new that joined in. I appreciate y'all. I am going to be going ahead and stopping this. I might go ahead and make a video or two, and if I do that, watch for it in the morning. I usually produce them at night and then let them pop in at 9 o'clock in the morning, because that way I think they're more likely to be seen by people, and as such more likely to get engagement and more likely for people to then other people to see them as well. So anywho, so again, just to remind everybody one more time, because I'll remind everybody again on Twitter, but there will be no regular show next week because I'm doing a concert. But next Thursday, 11 p.m. Central, I will be doing a show with Philip Ittner here on YouTube and on Blog Talk Radio. And as always, I'll be doing shows on Tuesdays and Thursdays with twitch.tv/nerdydan.com. And if for some reason the Supreme Court comes down with one of the major cases, like dealing with either student loans or abortion or anything like that, keep an eye out, because I'll probably very well do a quick live later on that day to talk about that on here as well. Until next time, this is Dan Zimmerman with Liberal Dan Radio. Talk from the left. That's right.